Hello everybody and welcome back to God Talk on Cambridge Community Access Television. Each week at this time we get together to talk about matters of faith and matters of life, matters of philosophy, the deep questions. That's where we go. We go deep, we go deep, we go deep. And the we that we're talking about, myself, Michael Mack, and my good friend Michael Koran.
Your deep friend, apparently.
Deep friend. We're deep, man.
In case you missed it, Columbia.
Deep. So I had a show last night that I was very, very pleased with how the show went. And the show that I'm talking about is the one that you've seen.
I gave you the name.
Did you give me?
Ingratitude is sharper than a serpent's tooth.
I know that there was.
Wow.
No, listen. We were having a conversation about the name, and I wish I had it tape recorded.
Yeah. This happens to me all the time.
What happens?
Yeah, I give people wonderful names and
wonderful titles, wonderful names, wonderful lines,
and they forget,
and they go off to become famous. While you,
I call my dear beloved friend Barbara Michaels, who's a clown. I said, and she was married.
Literally, she works as a clown.
She was marrying people, and I said, why don't you call yourself a jester of the peace?
Oh, that's clever.
And she did, and I do the same. And she forgot I had given that to her.
Yeah. Now I haven't forgotten. But what I remember is that we were having a conversation about the title of this show, which I will give you in a moment, beloved audience. I will give you the title of the show, you had a major input in that title, but we might have gone back a little and forth a little bit. You don't remember it that way. You take total credit. Total credit.
I'm good at this, but that's okay. That's okay. You can have as much credit as you want, because crying is good for my dry eye.
Are you saying that
this is my one?
This is going to make you cry?
My one claim to fame is this great show. I gave him the whole title, and you wondered for.
No, you didn't actually. You did not. You gave me
the first
half.
Now we're talking. You've heard it. He's admitted it.
No, well,
cross-examination.
Wait a second.
It's too late. It's on tape. Let's move on.
I'm not convinced.
Oh, too late.
I think that you put the title out there.
Oh, good.
Or some version.
Oh!
And I think that we went back.
No.
I don't remember.
I know you.
I don't remember completely.
Good.
I don't have a perfect memory.
Yes, I do.
And I know that you do not have a perfect memory either, because I have tested your memory and found it wanting.
This is the one thing that I remember. Never mind.
Here's the title.
Yeah.
The full title of my solo play, 90-minute play, is Conversations with My Molester, A Journey of Faith. And the Conversations with My Molester part was the part of the title that Michael had a profound influence on. That's as far as I can go.
And I remember
That's
even
as far as
the
I can go.
conversation we had was about what the second part would be. A Journey of Faith.
No, we didn't talk about that.
Fortunately, this is on TV.
Zero.
I have the video. I'm going to show it to you.
The video of what?
Of how I gave you when I gave you this.
Oh, I see. That when I was visiting you in your apartment, you had the camera running.
I didn't want to tell you. I knew this would happen, and there was a hidden camera.
I'm ready to be convinced.
Yes.
Ready to be convinced anytime.
I'm sure this
just show me the police video, and I'll feel better.
You have more important things to say. I just want to say that I just got an email from a friend of a friend who saw Michael's show last night, which you now know the name of. It was imprinted in our minds, and she said she could have heard a pin drop through the whole performance. It was so moving. The performance you did last night, and you're going to tell us. Maybe.
Well, it was a fabulous audience, and any performer will tell you, any actor will tell you that you can't have a good show without a good audience.
And tell us where and how many.
This was at St. Maria Goretti Catholic Church up in Linfield, Mass, which is about 15 miles north of us here in Boston. So it's right up 93 and off of 95 128, Linfield. And what's really significant about St. Maria Goretti Parish is, I want to tell you a little story about St. Maria Goretti.
You did tell me, but tell us again, tell all of us, yes.
So she is the Catholic Church's youngest saint, the youngest named saint. She died at 11 years old. She was the victim of sexual assault, the victim of rape. And when she refused her attacker's advances, he stabbed her 14 times. And she didn't die immediately. I think she died within a matter of days, but she was hospitalized, and on her deathbed, she forgave her attacker. And so St. Maria Goretti is the patron saint of victims of sexual assault and also a patron saint of forgiveness.
And where did this happen?
This happened in Italy. I forget where exactly. A small town, I think, in Italy.
Over 100 years ago, yes.
It was right around the turn of the last century. So
Yep.
she was born in the 1890s, I think, and died in the early 1900s.
And her name again is?
St. Maria Goretti, Goretti.
Right.
And here, I think, so in order to be a saint, there has to be some kind of, I believe that this is still so, but there has to be some kind of miracle attributed to you or your life, that somebody, through your intercession, has to experience some kind of miracle.
It has to be after you die that happens.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
But the one miracle that I know of is this one that I'm about to tell you, but there may be others that I'm not familiar with. But the guy who killed her, of course, went to prison, and for years, maybe even decades, he was very resistant, very stubborn, refused. I'm not even sure if he admitted that he had done anything wrong. But anyway, somewhere in his career in prison, he had a vision. And in this vision, he saw Maria Goretti as the 11-year-old girl. And she said nothing. I think this is correct. She said nothing to him in this vision, but she had a bouquet of roses. She had 14, I believe they were white roses, and she handed him a rose one by one. And of course, she was stabbed 14 times, so there was a rose for each of the times that she was stabbed. And it was such a profound experience for him. It really changed his life. He ended up converting to Catholicism, ended up becoming a model prisoner, and after however many years or decades he served in prison, he was eventually released. And when he was released, one of the first things he did was go to her mother and to ask for her mother's forgiveness. And her mother said, well, if my daughter can forgive you, then I can forgive you. And I believe that when she was canonized in 1950 by Pope Pius XII, I think. When she was canonized, both the mother and her murderer were there at the canonization. And I believe that he, by that point, the murderer, had not only had he been released, but he became a religious. He joined one of the religious orders and spent the rest of his life doing good works. So I believe that is the miracle. That the miracle was the conversion. It was the combination of the vision appearing to this man and this man's life being changed by it. So anyway, Maria Goretti is the patron of this church up in Linfield, and I kind of think of her being the patron saint of my show, because my show really is all about my experience as a child of enduring clergy sexual abuse, and my leaving the church and wandering in the desert, if you will, wandering as a spiritual seeker for about 40 years, and then through a series of remarkable events, finding my way back to the church. And one of the many remarkable events for me was that this experience that I was molested at the age of 11. Actually, I just realized that also, age 11, in a little town in North Carolina back in 1968. And in 2005, when I decided to see if my abuser was still alive, not only was he still alive, but he was living just a few miles away from me, a few miles away from my home in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So I had imagined for decades one day meeting him again, having a conversation with him again, and really trying to come full circle and find some kind of resolution to what had been a lifelong struggle with these formative experiences and what they meant to me, what they made me, how they informed my life so profoundly for so many years. So anyway, that's really where the play begins with my experiences as a child, my wandering in the desert, and then picks up with my attempting to contact my abuser. And the story takes so many twists and turns. It's really one of those that truth is stranger than fiction experiences of life. But I did find my way through that process, completely unexpected to be. I did find myself returning again to the Catholic Church all the way. I came back all the way.
So that process of wanting to talk to your molester helped you get back to the Catholic Church?
Yes, it was not as direct as what you're suggesting. It was much more circuitous. I mean, it took probably 3 years from the time that I tried to contact him to the time that I found my way back. Maybe 3.5 years. So it was quite a process.
Is it possible to give us one example or one step or a significant step that moved you to become a Catholic again? It might be too hard a question.
It's a tough question, but I think I can answer it this way, that I was there at his funeral. He died in a very bizarre way that I reveal in the story. Just as I was about to contact him, I had made several attempts beforehand, half-hearted attempts, but I was ready to go all the way, and I was just about there, and I learned of his dying in this bizarre way, and I felt so upset with myself for not being more proactive that I went out to that I found where his funeral was. And I went out to it. That was the first time that I was back in a church in a long time.
Wow.
First time I was back in a Catholic church in many years. And I just remembered how, even it was in this very strange setting. It felt kind of like home to me. I don't know how else to describe it, but there was just something very familiar and very mysterious about it. And what played out over the next few weeks and months was even more mysterious. But I felt that on this journey I was really, something beautiful was guiding me. And I ended up going back to that little town in Brevard and having a series of remarkable encounters that sealed the deal. And one of them was going to confession. and really telling the priest in confession the whole story. And it was a remarkable and a personally momentous event. Going back to that little town in North Carolina, I spent a weekend doing that, and it was profound for me. And it kind of sealed the deal as far as bringing me back to church, bringing me back to the Catholic Church, and bringing me into a state of grace, a state of forgiveness. Now, one thing I want to point out about forgiveness is something that, this is actually reflected in one of the gospel readings where Peter asked Jesus, how many times are we supposed to forgive? It's like 7 times, will that do it? So if I forgive this many times, am I done? And Jesus says, it's more like 70 times 7. So we're talking about 490 times. But that's been my experience. I go through periods of grace. I mean, that weekend in North Carolina was like an amazing...
And North Carolina was where the molesting happened.
Yes, in that very town. I went back for that weekend and had a profound experience of release and forgiveness and letting go, and to the point where I, was praying for my abuser. Heartfelt prayers that he have the kind of release and freedom and sense of joy that I was feeling myself then. But these moments are all they're transitory. They don't last forever. And so forgiveness is still a lifelong process. And I think it's true that anyone who grows up, who has a parent, who will have things that they will be struggling with for the rest of their life. Things that their parents did, or mistakes that their parents made, or ways that their parents behaved. And it really is a lifelong process of coming to forgive, to release, to let go of our parents and see them for the human beings that they are. And so the same is true with my... it's similarly the way that I experience forgiveness with my molester, and for that matter with my church, because the Catholic Church failed when it came to protecting children, and it really took the scandal, the crisis of clergy sexual abuse being broken open by the Boston Globe to really drive the point home that the church was failing to protect its children, and so the church had to undergo a profound humbling. And I think that humbling has been for the good. I think that we are taught in church, we are taught at Mass the importance of humility. Again and again, it runs throughout all of the church's teachings about humility. Well, the church had to learn a little bit of humility itself, a lot of humility itself, and I think that it's been for the good. And I think that our current Pope, Pope Francis, is an exceptional example of just that kind of humility.
So you're saying that if you wanted to forgive me for my many irritations, that it's a process. You could, in your heart, you can truly forgive me, but that's just the beginning. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it begins with the willingness. The willingness really is.
So if you tell me you forgive me for interrupting you, for example, right now, does that mean that I'm not really forgiven? It's just the beginning of a journey of being forgiven, or could I feel totally forgiven?
Oh, you can feel totally forgiven, and I can totally forgive, but that does not mean that at some later point I will remember once again how annoying you can be. And then...
you think this is annoying? Columbia, is this annoying or is this affection? Especially if I keep doing it and you keep asking.
If it starts getting harder, it starts getting more annoying.
That's more than annoying, yes.
But I'm sure that every couple, every intimate couple comes to know really intimately what it's like to experience annoyance, upset, anger,
Or
affront.
significant things. I'm not sure I have forgiven people close to me. I forgive them. I had a forgiveness bypass. I would, in my mind, thank you for saying this, I would think I forgave someone, but I would have other feelings deeper. I didn't know.
That's exactly the experience that I had, because in my mind, I forgave my abuser when I was young, when I was a teenager, a young man. I sort of like, sure, I forgive you. In my mind, I would say, sure, he's forgiven. It's like, whatever. I moved on. It wasn't until I encountered a full-throated outrage at his crimes and the crimes of other priests in the church. It wasn't until I really experienced that I was able to come to a much truer, much deeper, and more committed forgiveness, because I think that's another part of it. So I talked about forgiveness really begin with a willingness just for the possibility of forgiving. So that's where it begins. But at some point in the process, one must be committed to doing it.
To follow through.
To follow through again and again.
So you need to be outraged if I keep doing this. You might have forgiven me.
Do you want to experience my outrage?
Yes, because that's the only way to get to true forgiveness.
But it's sort of like a marriage contract, it seems to me, in that when people get married, they make a commitment to love each other, sickness, health,
Poverty,
wealth, annoyance, freedom from annoyance.
till death do us part.
Till death do us part. And I think that forgiveness invites us into a contract.
Well,
And really, it's a contract with life. It's a contract with life. Are you willing to let go of old hurts, old angers, old resentments? Are you willing to let them go so that you can fully live? I mean, really, forgiveness is an opportunity at release from bondage. It's an opportunity to shuck off the chains.
so here's a question. So
Especially if it's something that happened a long time ago and that we're still carrying it after many years and decades.
I think I forgave my brother for trying to steal our inheritance, especially since he was unsuccessful.
Okay.
But I would not forget. I would not entrust money to him again.
I understand. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting.
No.
And nor does forgiveness mean, so for example, using the experience of the clergy abuse crisis, forgiveness does not mean seeking justice. And people seek justice in whatever way they need to. For me, justice meant writing this play and working through it internally for many years as I wrote it, until finally I felt like I had a product or a work of art that I wanted to share. For other people, justice means going through the court system. There are a lot of ways to seek justice, but I think in this world we are morally bound to seeking justice. Justice basically meaning that everybody is treated fairly. And if a crime is committed against somebody, then justice must be served, so that the perpetrator of the crime can understand the harm that they inflicted. I mean, really, that's what the word penance and penitentiary come from the same place. They come from the word penses, which means to think, to meditate on. And so originally the idea of an idea behind the penitentiary was it's a place where you go to think about what you did.
And ideally, it is not punitive, but is restorative justice.
Restorative, thank you. Beautifully said. Hopefully, a person comes out of, in the best possible case, a person comes out of prison recognizing that they committed a crime, recognizing that that they have done harm to someone else, feeling a sense of contrition for the harm that they did, and a desire to make amends and to live better, to live a better life, to live a kinder life, a more just life. So that's the ideal. Don't know how close we are to the ideal, but anyway, we keep working at it.
And you are in sharing this. So how does it feel as you continue to share this story in the last minute we have?
It feels really affirming to me. I sort of like know where the story begins, and I also know where it ends. And so I go through whenever I do the show, for 95 minutes, I'm reliving this whole story. But what I take away, what I leave with, the ending that I leave with is an ending of freedom, is an ending of release, is an ending of beginning again. And yeah, for me that's essential, because what I walk out of the theater with is what I live with. And so the question for me personally is like, what do I want to live with? I couldn't live in the outrage forever. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't stay there. I have to, if I'm going to honor myself and my life and my experience,
15 seconds.
Then what I need to do is to give myself the freedom to walk out of the theater a free man.
Well,
Period. With our 5 seconds remaining, thank you for hearing us